Welcome to week 11 lecture, and this week groups 14 and 15 made their presentations. Thank you for making the presentations groups 14 and 15 members. So let's start with last week's discussion questions, right? By group 12, question 1. Do K-pop fandoms as primary agent of political mobilization challenge traditional ideas of protest music, right? So many students argue that protest culture extends beyond artists to fan communities, and fandom networks enable large-scale and rapid mobilization. And digital fan practices translate into political action, and fans were framed as active agents rather than passive audiences, right? And overall, the discussion postings redefined protest culture as decentralized and fan-driven rather than artist-centered. Okay, let's move on to the second question by group 12. Why is K-pop fandom activism underestimated in the West, right? Some of you identified stereotypes of fans as young and apolitical, right? That is like a common stereotype, right? And K-pop framed as also like entertainment. That leads to dismissal of activism, which is a good point. And online activism often perceived as less legit, right? And racialized and gendered biases marginalize fandom voices as well. All very good point. So overall, the discussion post linked underestimation to cultural, gendered, and media-based biases. And group 13, question 1, what responsibilities does K-pop have toward cultural origins, right? This is a kind of this has been a recurring question that which is worth think about, right? Student emphasized acknowledging Black cultural influences, right? And so this recognition should be framed as respect, not limitation, right? And if there's a lack of acknowledgement, it creates tension in global exchange, which is a good point. And credit is seen as enabling stronger cross-cultural dialogue, right? So there should be, valid credit made. So overall, the discussion post viewed cultural acknowledgement as essential for ethical global circulation. And the group 13 second question, should fandoms engage in political social movements, right? Many supported engagement, maybe we should, due to strong organizational capacity, and fandom practices translate into political mobilization. We have seen that, and some raised concerns about internal conflict and diversity, right? So maybe it's a good thing to be involved in some political and social movement, but we have to be careful about some conflict among fans, and we have to also be careful about the diversity, right? And some pointed out the balance between activism and entertainment should emphasize, right? So overall, the postings recognize both the political potential and internal tensions of fandom activism. Okay, so for this week 11, we are focusing on K-pop masculinity and power, right? So K-pop reshapes masculinity through soft and hybrid forms. So it's kind of, we're going to talk more about it, but the masculinity presented in K-pop boy bands, right? That is kind of not the same as what masculinity is supposed to be in the Western culture, right? So in that way, it kind of, can reshape what masculinity means, right? With its own limit, though. So these forms enable global appeal and fan engagement. And the key focus of this week's materials is about representation, ideology, and fandom practices. And let's move on to group 14. They identified three main arguments. The first one is about hybrid masculinity, right? And K-pop idols combine soft and super masculine traits. They hybrid this kind of seemingly opposite characters of masculinity, or soft is not usually considered as traditional sense of Western masculinity anyways, and to appeal to Western audiences, especially like female audiences, right? And but their second argument is about fan stigma, right? So K-pop fans face racialized and gendered stigma, including the Koreaboo label that we earlier on in the course we talked about the Koreaboo kind of stereotype, right? And the last argument was about the limited subversion. So soft masculinity challenges stereotypes about masculinity, but remains constrained by racial boundaries, right? And the discussion questions raised by Group 14, the first one is, does soft masculinity disrupt norms or create a new controlled idea, right? So it's a good question to think about, right? And I mean the answer can be both yes or no. Okay, let's move on to the discussion questions raised by Group 14. The first one, Group 14 asked, we need to think carefully about soft masculinity, right? And the question was, does soft masculinity disrupt norms or create a new controlled idea, right? So my answer is partially, but not completely, right? So K-pop shows different images of masculinity. For example, idols can wear makeup and, show emotions and still be very attractive, those male idols, right? This clearly challenges the traditional tough image of men in the US or other Western culture, right? But at the same time, it creates a new standard. Idols are still expected to be slim, stylish, and visually perfect, right? So instead of removing pressure, it may just replace one idea with another in terms of the pressure, right? So let's move on to the second question. Is Koreaboo stigma about appropriation or racial gender policing, right? So why are fans called Koreaboo, right? At first, it looks like a problem of cultural appropriation. They're like Koreaboos, those fans, they're very excessive and they just are kind of stealing whatever from, the Korean pop culture without genuine appreciation or genuine understanding, right? But, let's think about this. This is also about who is allowed to desire whom, right? For example, when fans openly express attraction to Asian male idols, this often creates discomfort, right? And also the label Koreaboo is not just a criticism. It can also work as a way to control and limit that desire, right? So as a non-Asian, non-Korean fan, if you really, express your kind of desire or attraction toward this feminine kind of, soft masculinity, Korean, idol groups or Korean idol members, right, who are men, then that can be stigmatized as like, oh, you're like a Koreaboo or you're weird and all that, right? So even like your desire, if you express your desire, it can be criticized, right? In that way, it's like, what kind of desire is considered normal and what kind of desire is non-normal, right? Okay, so next, let's talk about this hybridity, right? As Group 14 showed, K-pop, uses hybrid masculinity, right? But here is the key point. This is not just a cultural mix, right? The tough man with like a soft, feminine kind of man, madness, right? It is also about power. For example, K-pop often borrows from Black popular culture, such as hip-hop style, fashion, and even the performances, right? So we need to ask a deeper question: who is being borrowed from, and who becomes globally successful, right? K-pop idols again, they gain global visibility if they're successful, right? When they, with this borrowed hip hop kind of style, performance and all that, right? But then, so the hybridity is not just neutral, right? And while the K-pop idols, successful K-pop, idols gain global visibility, but the cultural origins are not always equally recognized, right? So it is shaped by unequal global power relations. And in other words, this is not just about style or musical genre or how you dress, how manly you look, right? It is about how culture moves within a hierarchy. And we cannot ignore this hierarchy, right? And building on again Group 14's discussion, I want to shift the focus from masculinity to desire a little bit more. So K-pop has made Asian men more visible and attractive. That is true, right? And this is in itself is an important change, but we also need to ask what kind of desire is allowed and what kind is not, right? For example, many people admire K-pop idols, but they still see them as Korean or different, right? So this means Asian men can be desired, but they are not fully accepted as the norm. And also Group 14 talked about this. And when fans show strong attraction, they're often accused of fetishizing. So desire is not free. It is regulated and controlled by social norms. And this is the key point. K-pop does not just change masculinity, it reveals how race and power shape even our feelings and attraction. Okay, so let's move on to Group 15's three main arguments they identified. So the first one was about soft masculinity as strategy, right? So BTS's soft masculinity is a calculated marketing strategy targeting global female audiences, which is a really, really good point, right? And the second argument is about this love yourself as ideology, the campaign, right? So BTS's message shifts social problems into individual responsibility. So, if you love yourself, you can overcome all these things, and even though there's structural inequalities, you can overcome, and it's all up to you, right? In that sense, it's kind of shifting the, social problems into individual responsibilities. Again, a very good point. And the last argument, fandom as a productive force. So BTS fandom actively produces meaning, community, and even political action that we have, talked about along the semester, right? Okay, let's talk about the discussion questions raised by Group 15. So Group 15 asked the first question. The first question by Group 15 is about the love yourself message, right? So does it really help young people, or does it turn social problems into personal responsibility? So there's no again wrong and right answer, but the answer can be both, right? So we need to be really careful. On one hand, this message can be very powerful. For example, many people, young people, feel pressure, anxiety, and insecurity, and hearing love yourself message can give them emotional comfort. But at the same time, there is a limitation, right? When all problems are explained at the individual level, we stop talking about larger issues like inequality, competition, or social pressure, right? So instead of asking why is the system so difficult, people start asking what's wrong with me, right? Why can I love myself more, right? This is why we can say that the message is helpful, but also part of a broader ideological structure need to be questioned and dealt with, right? So now let's look at the second question about fandom. Is fandom a form of resistance, or does it simply support the system? So again, the answer can be both, right? For example, as Group 15 showed, fans can organize, donate, and participate in political movement like BLM, Black Lives Matter, right? But this shows that fandom is not. This really shows that fandom is not passive, right? It can be a space for collective action and social engagement. However, at the same time, fans are still deeply connected to the industry. They buy albums, stream music, and promote the group, which helps sustain the system itself. So fandom can challenge certain ideas, but can also reproduce the system itself that it depends on, right? So I want to move on to the conclusion this time right away. So what we can take away from both presentations is first, K-pop clearly expand what masculinity can look like. It introduces softer, more emotional, and more flexible, masculinity, right? But at the same time, these challenges do not fully break existing boundaries. They're still shaped by race, culture, and global power structures. So it has its own limitation, right? And second, K-pop is not just entertainment. It is part of a larger cultural industry that produces meaning and emotion, right? And finally, fandom is not simply passive. We have talked about this many times, right? Fans actively interpret, share, and sometimes even challenge these meanings. And by doing so, they create kind of new meanings as well, right? So overall, what we see is this. K-pop is not just about music, right? It is a space where culture, power, and desire are constantly interacting. Okay, so thank you for your attention for to this lecture, and for the final project, right? You have you have to submit 2 parts. The video presentation is you present what you did and what you found through your research, right? And the other supporting document, I call it portfolio, but all your data you collected, what kind of interview, if you did interview questions, the consent form and the interview transcript, or if you search some online materials, the screenshots of online materials, the fan club, conversations you found online, all meeting notes that you took a note while you're having group meeting to discuss your project. So all this supporting document you submit it when you submit your presentation. By the way, the video presentation, please submit it as a YouTube link, not as MP4. It's it takes up so much space to download, and it takes longer time for me to download it, all that. So please create a YouTube link and submit your video project, the video report, right? Along with your supporting document. So, in terms of the format of document, you can, upload multiple ones, but if it's all interview transcript, you put them together into one document and submit that as one document. And meeting notes, one document, or screenshots as one document. That will be easier for me to look at it if you somewhat categorize them, right? Okay, and if you have questions, please email me, and thank you so much again.